Ethan Harwood was the sort of man whose very presence commanded attention. When he stepped into a room, conversation softened and glances followed him. In the business circles of London and across Europe, his name was well known. Unlike many who had inherited wealth, Ethan had built his fortune brick by brick. Starting from modest beginnings, he worked tirelessly, investing in property, trading wisely, and taking risks that others would have avoided. Over time, his discipline and sharp instincts transformed him into a man of extraordinary means. By his late 50s, Ethan lived in a grand estate on the outskirts of Surrey. The mansion sat on acres of land, its gardens stretching so far that one could lose track of time simply walking the paths. He owned apartments in prime London locations, commercial properties abroad, and even a penthouse in Manhattan. His collection of classic cars gleamed in their showroom-like garage, and his wardrobe consisted only of tailored suits. From the outside, Ethan Harwood's life looked perfect. Wealth, respect, and elegance surrounded him. But more than his riches, what stirred envy among his acquaintances was his marriage. Years earlier, tragedy had taken his first wife, leaving him hollow and convinced that love was behind him. Yet, against all odds, he found companionship again. Her name was Amelia Rhodes. She was younger by more than 2 decades, graceful, intelligent, and outwardly devoted. At gatherings, Amelia held Ethan's arm gently, her voice soft, her laughter light. She seemed the image of the perfect partner, and friends often remarked how fortunate Ethan was to have discovered happiness once more. Ethan believed it wholeheartedly. To him, Amelia was a blessing. She filled his quiet halls with warmth, cooked for him with her own hands despite the household staff, and insisted that caring for her husband was her joy. Ethan trusted her completely. He thought he was safe within the shelter of her love. But a mere 2 months into their marriage, shadows began to creep in. It started subtly stomach pains that came and went, waves of dizziness, and fatigue so heavy he sometimes struggled to rise from bed. Physicians ran test after test, only to shrug, muttering about stress, age, or perhaps indigestion. At first, Ethan accepted these explanations, but a troubling pattern emerged. He felt ill most often after meals prepared by Amelia. In that same household lived someone whose watchful eyes missed little. Her name was Margaret Lewis, a housekeeper in her early 40s, strong, dignified, and reserved. Margaret carried with her the weight of a difficult life, orphaned young. She had raised siblings on her own, taking any job she could find. She had worked in homes where she was treated as little more than furniture. But Ethan's estate was different. Ethan greeted her kindly, asked about her well-being, and insisted she take Sundays to attend church. To Margaret, those gestures, though small, meant respect. They planted in her a sense of loyalty, a devotion to the man who had shown her humanity. Was loyalty that sharpened her instincts. Margaret began noticing things others dismissed. One evening, after guests had departed from a dinner party, she was tidying the kitchen when she noticed Amelia at the stove. Everyone assumed Amelia had gone to bed, but Margaret, moving quietly with her stack of plates, saw her reach into a small tin tucked behind the spice jars. Amelia sprinkled a fine powder into the pot of sauce, stirring briskly as though nothing were unusual. Margaret froze, her heart hammered in her chest. That wasn't seasoning. That wasn't the usual pinch of salt or dash of pepper. Something inside Margaret whispered danger. Later that night, as if on cue, Ethan was doubled over again, sweat running down his face while Amelia rubbed his back tenderly, whispering soothing words. Margaret's thoughts churned. She could no longer ignore what she had seen. The following morning, she made a decision that frightened her as much as it resolved her. She would gather proof. Her old phone was outdated, but it had a working camera and recorder. The next time she saw Amelia cooking, she positioned herself discreetly in the corner and pressed record. Her hands shook, her breath caught, but she captured what she feared: Amelia sprinkling the mysterious powder once again into Ethan's dinner. That night, in her small servants' quarters, Margaret replayed the video, her hands trembling. The evidence was there, but she knew skeptics could still dismiss it. She needed more. Days later, she overheard Amelia speaking on the phone in the hall. Margaret quietly pressed record again. This time, the words chilled her blood. "Soon, Ethan will be gone," Amelia said with a soft laugh. "Everything he owns will be mine. I'll finally have the life I deserve." Hearing that cruel confidence solidified Margaret's resolve. She could no longer remain silent. The next day, she found Ethan alone in his study, His complexion was pale, his movements weary. Margaret's voice was hushed as she approached. "Sir, please, I beg you, watch this." She handed him her phone. Ethan frowned, but humored her. Pressing play, his eyes widened as he watched his wife stir in the pot, adding the powder. His lips parted in disbelief. "What is this?" he muttered. "It's real," Margaret whispered urgently. "She's harming you. I saw it with my own eyes." Ethan shook his head in denial. "No, Amelia loves me. She would never." Margaret, desperate, played the second recording. Amelia's voice filled the room, cold and calculating. "Yet love is a powerful blinder." Ethan snapped the phone shut, his jaw set. "Enough. You're trying to turn me against her. You must be jealous." Margaret's heart cracked, but she pleaded. "I swear, sir, I only want to save you." Before he could answer, Amelia entered the study. Her gaze flicked from Ethan to Margaret to the phone on the desk. For an instant, her mask slipped, but then she clutched her chest dramatically. "Darling, what's happening?" "She says you're poisoning me," Ethan admitted. Amelia gasped, tears springing instantly to her eyes. "How could you believe such a thing? She hates me. She wants to ruin us." She buried her face against his shoulder, sobbing convincingly. Ethan wrapped an arm around her. Margaret's tears streamed as she bowed her head. His cold dismissal cut her deeper than any insult. "Leave," he ordered. She obeyed, retreating with grief in her chest. Weeks passed. Ethan's health worsened. He grew weaker, barely able to walk, while Amelia fussed over him with feigned tenderness, spoon-feeding him meals laced with poison. Margaret watched helplessly, powerless yet determined. One evening, Ethan nearly collapsed in the garden, laid in his bed, breath shallow. He could no longer dismiss the nagging memory of Amelia's cruel laughter on the recording. Damned at him. Could Margaret have been right all along? At dawn, summoning what little strength he had, Ethan called for Margaret. With trembling hands, he reached for her. "Forgive me. I should have listened. Do you still have those recordings?" "Yes, sir," she whispered, her eyes wet. She had even captured new ones, further proof of Amelia's schemes. Ethan listened, his chest heaving with anguish. The woman he trusted, the woman he adored, had been slowly murdering him for his wealth. Together, they contacted the authorities. The police arrived discreetly, reviewed the recordings, and prepared their case. That afternoon, officers entered the grand estate. Amelia's mask finally shattered. She screamed, fought, cursed Ethan as they bound her hands. "You'll regret this." She shrieked as they dragged her away. Ethan sat weeping, the betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. But Margaret remained at his side, her steady presence a balm. Weeks later, Ethan lay in a hospital bed, slowly recovering as the poison left his system. His body was frail, but his spirit clung to life. Margaret never left his side, offering water, prayers, and encouragement. Bit by bit, he regained strength. When he finally returned home, the estate felt quieter, emptier, yet freer. The illusions were gone. He filed for divorce, severing Amelia from his life completely. One evening, Ethan sat in his study and looked at Margaret. "You saved me," he said softly. "Even when I doubted you, you held to the truth. You risked everything to protect me." Margaret gave a gentle smile. "I only did what was right, sir. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it saves." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. He realized then that the greatest treasure was not his mansions, cars, or accounts. The true wealth was life itself, truth, loyalty, and the courage of an honest heart. The story of Ethan Harwood spread quietly among neighbors, no longer as gossip, but as a warning. Evil can hide behind beauty, but truth eventually finds its voice. Trust, once broken, teaches caution and sometimes the most overlooked. So the one who works quietly in the background carries the courage to save a life.